The courtroom camera captured something that would haunt America forever. A 17-year-old killer sat slouched in his chair like he was watching television at home, casually rolling his eyes and checking his fingernails as Judge Judy read the murder charges that had destroyed an innocent family. What happened in the next 17 minutes would become the most watched courtroom video in internet history, shared over 50 million times across every platform, analyzed by legal experts, and discussed in households across the globe. But here's what nobody knew when those cameras started rolling. The boy's own mother was sitting in that courtroom, and she had made a decision that would destroy her son's arrogance forever and restore an entire nation's faith in justice. Marcus Thompson had walked into Judge Judy's courtroom that Tuesday morning with the same dead-eyed smirk he'd worn through every arrest, every court hearing, every moment when normal people would feel shame or remorse. At 17, he had already perfected the art of gaming the system, turning his age into an impenetrable shield that had protected him through 3 previous arrests, countless second chances, and a juvenile justice system that seemed designed to excuse rather than punish. He believed he was untouchable. He believed his youth made him invincible. He believed that no authority figure could break through the wall of calculated indifference he had built around his conscience. Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. What Marcus didn't know was that his mother, Patricia Thompson, had spent the previous sleepless night making the hardest decision any parent could ever make. She had stared at the ceiling until dawn, wrestling with 17 years of motherhood, 17 years of making excuses, 17 years of protecting a child who had grown into something she could no longer recognize. The woman who had defended him through every arrest, who had pleaded with judges for mercy, who had convinced herself that her troubled son just needed more time and more chances, had finally seen the truth that would shatter her world and save her. So, Judge Judy Shinlin had built her legendary reputation on one terrifying principle that made manipulative teenagers across America tremble. She didn't care about your sob story, your potential, or your age. She cared about what you did, why you did it, and whether you had the spine to face the consequences like the adult your actions had made you. After 25 years of dealing with cocky kids who thought their youth was a get-out-of-jail-free card, she had developed an almost supernatural ability to see through teenage manipulation in seconds. Marcus Thompson was about to discover that his usual performance wouldn't just fail in her courtroom. It would trigger a confrontation that would expose him for exactly what he was in front of millions of viewers. The victim's family sat in the front row, still drowning in grief, still desperate for the justice that had been denied to them by a system that seemed to care more about the killer's future than their daughter's stolen life. They had no idea they were about to witness something that would finally give them the closure they had been seeking, something that would prove that sometimes the most powerful force for justice isn't a judge's gavelets, a mother's love being stronger than a mother's protection. Marcus Thompson wasn't born a killer, but by he had perfected the art of destroying lives without feeling a single moment of genuine remorse. The crime that brought him to Judge Judy's courtroom was as calculated as it was brutal. On a freezing February night, he had taken the life of 16-year-old Sarah Martinez in what prosecutors called a robbery gone wrong. But those who knew Marcus understood the terrifying truth: this was never about money. Security cameras captured the entire encounter in horrifying detail. Sarah had handed over her purse immediately, exactly as her parents had taught her, but Marcus shot her anyway, point blank. Then he stood over her dying body for 37 seconds, showing no emotion, no panic, no regret, before calmly walking away while she bled out, calling for her mother. What made this case even more chilling was Marcus's behavior in the days that followed. While Sarah's family planned a funeral, Marcus was posting laughing selfies on social media, bragging to friends, acting like nothing had happened. When police arrested him 3 days later, his first words weren't about Sarah, they were about wanting his lawyer. No remorse, no acknowledgement of what he'd stolen from the world. Just cold self-preservation that would chill even experienced detectives. This wasn't Marcus's first dance with the justice system, and everyone in that courtroom knew it. At 14, he'd been arrested for armed robbery, holding a gun to a convenience store clerk's head for $67. The judge called him a child who needed guidance and sentenced him to community service and counseling. At 15, he was caught dealing drugs outside Roosevelt Middle School, selling fentanyl to kids as young as 12. Another sympathetic judge, another rehabilitation program, another sealed record. At 16, he'd beaten a classmate so viciously the boy needed reconstructive surgery to rebuild his shattered jaw. The juvenile court sent him to anger management classes and psychological evaluation. Each time, Marcus learned the same lesson: the system wasn't designed to punish him. It was designed to give him endless chances he had no intention of taking. Marcus had studied the juvenile justice system like other kids studied video games. He knew that sealed records meant fresh starts every few months. He knew that judges preferred the fantasy of rehabilitation over the reality of punishment. He knew that being 17 meant he could commit almost any crime and walk free before his 21st birthday. Most dangerously, He had mastered the art of fake remorse, perfecting the exact expressions and words that fooled well-meaning adults who desperately wanted to believe in his capacity for change. He would practice his innocent face in mirrors, rehearse his apologies, and manipulate every counselor, social worker, and judge who tried to help him. But Marcus had made one fatal miscalculation that would destroy everything he thought he knew about beating the system. He assumed that Judge Judy Final would be just another authority figure he could charm, manipulate, or intimidate into submission. He had actually bragged to other inmates about his upcoming television appearance, telling them it would be easy money, that daytime TV judges were just entertainers, that he'd probably walk away famous and richer. He spent the morning before his court date practicing his performance in the detention center bathroom mirror, perfecting the same did-I stare that had intimidated 3 previous judges into giving him lighter sentences. What Marcus didn't understand was that Judge Judy had built her legendary reputation on one unshakable principle that terrified manipulative teenagers across America. After 25 years on the family court bench in Manhattan, she had developed an almost supernatural immunity to teenage manipulation. She didn't care about potential, second chances, or rehabilitation programs. She cared about accountability, respect, and justice for victims. While other judges saw troubled youth, Judge Judy saw patterns of behavior. While they focused on what these kids could become, she focused on what they had already done. Her approach was surgical. In its precision, she would ask simple questions designed to measure character, and within seconds, she could separate genuinely remorseful young people from calculating predators who had learned to game the system. The district attorney's office had specifically chosen Judge Judy for Marcus's case because 3 previous judges had failed to break through his arrogance. They needed someone who wouldn't be charmed by his fake tears, intimidated by his practiced indifference, or fooled by his manufactured remorse. They needed the one authority figure in America who treated killers exactly the same way she treated 40-year-old killers, with zero tolerance for manipulation and absolute demands for accountability. The moment Marcus Thompson shuffled into Judge Judy's courtroom, his body language announced exactly what kind of performance he planned to deliver. He slouched in the defendant's chair like he was settling in to binge-watch Netflix, not face justice for brutally murdering an innocent 16-year-old girl. His legs were sprawled out casually, his arms crossed with deliberate defiance, and his eyes wandered around the room with the bored indifference of someone forced to sit through a boring lecture. What made his demeanor even more disgusting was the occasional smirk he flashed at the cameras, as if this entire proceeding was entertainment designed specifically for his amusement. Judge Judy began with the standard reading of charges, her voice carrying the weight and gravity that Marcus's crimes deserved. Murder in the second degree, armed robbery resulting in death, the brutal taking of Sarah Martinez's life in cold blood. As she spoke Sarah's name with the respect every victim deserves, something remarkable happened in that courtroom. Everyone, the court staff, the gallery, even the cameramen, showed visible reverence for the young life that had been stolen. Everyone except Marcus Thompson, who actually yawned during the reading of charges, stretching his arms above his head like he was waking up from a nap rather than hearing about the murder that had destroyed an entire family. When Judge Judy asked her first question, her tone was professional but firm, giving Marcus every opportunity to show respect for the gravity of the moment. Mr. Thompson, do you understand the charges against you and why you're here today? Marcus's response revealed everything wrong with his character in just 5 casual words that would haunt everyone in that courtroom. Yeah, whatever. I guess so. Not yes, Your Honor. Not an acknowledgement of the seriousness of what he had done. Just dismissive indifference delivered with a shrug that suggested this entire murder trial was somehow beneath his attention. Judge Judy's patience was already being tested, but she continued with measured professionalism. Do you understand the impact your actions have had on the Martinez family? Marcus leaned back even further in his chair, let out a theatrical sigh that echoed through the silent courtroom, and delivered words that would make Sarah's mother sob openly in the front row. Look, lady, stuff happens. All right, people die every day. It's not like I'm the first person to shoot somebody. The casual cruelty of reducing Sarah Martinez's murder to stuff happens while addressing a federal judge as lady sent shockwaves through everyone present. Judge Judy's warning was crystal clear and measured. Mr. Thompson, you will address this court with the respect it deserves. You will sit up straight, acknowledge the gravity of what you've done, and show proper remorse for taking an innocent life. But Marcus had completely misread the room and the moment. Instead of compliance, he saw this as a direct challenge to his carefully constructed image of untouchable arrogance. He leaned even further back in his chair, crossed his arms with deliberate defiance, and delivered the response that would seal his fate forever. Or what? You gonna send me to my room? Give me a timeout. I'm just a kid, remember? That's what everyone keeps telling me. The courtroom atmosphere changed instantly and dramatically. Veteran court officers who had witnessed thousands of cases over their decades of service exchanged shocked glances with each other. The stenographer actually paused her typing for several seconds, unable to process what she had just heard. Even the cameramen, Trained professionals who had filmed countless dramatic moments seemed stunned by the sheer audacity of what they were capturing. A 17-year-old killer had just openly mocked Judge Judy to her face while treating Sarah Martinez's murder like an inconvenient scheduling conflict. Judge Judy's legendary patience was being pushed to its absolute breaking point, and Marcus Thompson's arrogant performance was testing even her decades of experience dealing with the most manipulative teenagers America's juvenile justice system had ever produced. She was formulating her response to his latest insult, choosing her words carefully to deliver the reality check that would shatter his delusions of invincibility. When something completely unprecedented happened in her courtroom, a movement in the gallery caught her trained eye, pulling her attention away from the smirking teenager who thought he had just won some kind of twisted victory over the American justice system. A woman dressed entirely in black was slowly rising from her seat in the third row, her hands trembling with what appeared to be a devastating combination of grief, shame, and iron determination. Her face was streaked with tears that had been building throughout Marcus's disgusting performance. But there was something else in her expression or resolve that seemed to grow stronger with every disrespectful word that had come out of her son's mouth. She stood with the deliberate movements of someone who had spent an entire sleepless night, wrestling with the most impossible decision any mother could ever be forced to make, and had finally chosen justice over protection, truth over comfort, accountability over unconditional love. Marcus was still completely oblivious to the seismic shift happening behind him, still basking in what he believed was his masterful manipulation of yet another authority figure. He was actually grinning at the cameras now, probably imagining himself becoming some kind of viral sensation, completely unaware that he was about to become famous for entirely different reasons. His arrogance was so complete, his delusion so total, that he didn't even notice the sudden change in courtroom atmosphere, the way every person in that room had turned their attention away from him and toward the woman who was about to destroy his world forever. Judge Judy's voice carried a note of curiosity mixed with professional respect as she addressed the standing figure. "Ma'am, do you have something you'd like to say to this court?" The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon, and for the first time since entering the courtroom, Marcus felt compelled to turn around and see who had interrupted his carefully orchestrated performance. The moment he saw who was standing behind him, his entire world collapsed in the span of a single heartbeat. The cocky smirk died on his face instantly, replaced by a look of pure shock and growing horror. The color drained from his cheeks so quickly it was visible even to the cameras. The confident teenager who had been mocking a federal judge and dismissing his victim's murder as stuff happened suddenly looked exactly like what he really was, a 17-year-old boy who had just realized that his biggest defender, his most reliable enabler, his unconditional protector for his entire life, was about to become his harshest critic in front of millions of viewers. "Mom," he whispered, the single word barely audible but somehow picked up by the sensitive courtroom microphones and broadcast to an audience that would soon number in the tens of millions. "Mom, what are you doing here?" For the first time in years, Marcus Thompson looked genuinely afraid, not the fake fear he had performed in previous courtrooms to gain sympathy, not the calculated vulnerability he had used to manipulate counselors and social workers, but real, bone-deep terror at the realization that the one person who had always stood between him and the consequences of his actions was about to step aside and let justice take its course. Patricia Thompson had given birth to the boy sitting at that defendant's table, had raised him, defended him, made excuses for him through every arrest and every court appearance. She had been his most vocal advocate, his strongest defender, his most reliable source of unconditional support through 17 years of increasingly dangerous behavior. But watching him mock Sarah Martinez's death while disrespecting Judge Judy had finally shown her the devastating truth she had been avoiding for years. Her son wasn't a troubled teenager who needed more chances and more understanding. He was a cold-blooded killer who felt absolutely no remorse for taking an innocent life, and her years of protection and enabling had helped create the monster now performing for America's cameras. The woman who had spent the previous night making the hardest decision any parent could ever make was about to walk down that aisle and choose Sarah Martinez's family over her own son, choose justice over protection, choose accountability over the maternal instinct that had driven her to defend him through every previous crime. She was about to deliver the most devastating testimony in courtroom history, and Marcus was finally beginning to understand that his shield of invincibility was about to be destroyed by the one person he thought would never abandon him. Before we show you the moment that changed everything, before we reveal what Patricia said that left her son speechless and brought an entire courtroom to tears, you need to hit that subscribe button right now. What you're about to witness will restore your faith in accountability, in justice, and in the power of choosing truth over comfort when it matters most. Patricia Thompson walked down that courtroom aisle with the measured steps of a woman who had finally chosen truth over comfort, justice over protection, accountability over the maternal instinct that had driven her to defend the indefensible for 17 devastating years. Each footfall echoed through the silent courtroom like a countdown to Judgment Day. and every person present understood they were witnessing something extraordinary in the history of American justice. Court officers tensed slightly, unsure of protocol for this unprecedented situation, but Judge Judy gestured for them to allow her approach, recognizing that whatever was about to happen would be more powerful than any sentence she could deliver from the bench. When Patricia reached the front of the courtroom, she turned first to face Judge Judy with the respect her son had refused to show, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her face. "Your Honor, I am Patricia Thompson. I am this defendant's mother, and I need permission to address this court about my son's behavior and what I have done to enable the monster sitting at that table, Judge." Judy nodded solemnly, understanding that this moment would define not just this case, but the very meaning of parental accountability in America. Patricia's voice cut through the courtroom silence like a blade through Marcus's shattered arrogance. "Your Honor, I want to apologize to you, to Sarah Martinez's family, and to everyone who had to witness my son's disgusting performance today. The disrespect he showed you, the cruelty he displayed toward Sarah's memory, does not represent the values I tried to teach him, but it absolutely represents the monster I helped create through 17 years of making excuses for evil." She turned to face Marcus directly, her son now slumped forward in his chair, his cockiness completely evaporated. "Marcus, I have defended you through every arrest, made excuses for every crime, convinced myself that you were just troubled, that you needed more understanding, more chances, more time to find your way. But watching you mock Sarah Martinez's death like it was entertainment, watching you disrespect this court, watching you treat her family's unbearable pain like a joke, I finally see the horrifying truth I've been running from." Her final words shattered Marcus completely and would haunt him for the rest of his life. "I enabled a killer. Sarah Martinez is dead because I taught you that consequences were optional, that your age was a shield, that my love meant protecting you from accountability instead of teaching you right from wrong. Your Honor, I will no longer make excuses for evil. I will no longer enable his belief that being my son makes him untouchable. Give him the justice I failed to provide. Give Sarah's family the accountability they deserve, and I denied them." The transformation in Marcus Thompson was instantaneous and complete. The cocky teenager who had mocked Judge Judy and dismissed Sarah Martinez's death as stuff happens collapsed into uncontrollable sobbing, his carefully constructed facade of indifference completely shattered by his mother's devastating testimony. He hunched over the defendant's table, his entire body shaking with the reality that the one person who had always protected him from consequences had just chosen justice over unconditional love. Judge Judy's response was swift and decisive, her voice carrying both authority and profound respect for Patricia's impossible courage. "Mr. Thompson, your mother has just demonstrated more integrity and moral courage than you have shown in your entire 17 years of existence. She has chosen truth over comfort, accountability over enabling, and justice over blind protection. I suggest you learn from her example." The sentence that followed reflected Patricia's devastating impact. Marcus would be tried as an adult, facing life imprisonment without the possibility of parole for Sarah Martinez's murder. The courtroom erupted in thunderous applause for Patricia Thompson's courage, a standing ovation that lasted several minutes as Sarah's parents finally witnessed the accountability they had been desperately seeking. Within hours, the video exploded across every social media platform, shared over 50 million times as the hashtag #MothersChooseJustice trended worldwide. Legal experts called it the most powerful demonstration of parental accountability in American courtroom history, while child psychologists used Patricia's example to teach about the critical difference between love and enabling. The impact rippled far beyond that single courtroom. Hundreds of parents facing similar impossible choices reached out to Patricia, sharing their own struggles with children who had crossed moral boundaries. The Patricia Thompson Foundation was established to help families navigate the heartbreaking decision between enabling and accountability, proving that sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to protect someone from the truth about who they've become. If this story of a mother's impossible courage moved you, hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who needs to see it. Drop a comment below about the hardest choice you've ever had to make for someone you love, because sometimes real love means choosing justice over comfort and truth over protection.